31 days. That's how long it took the new VP to undo 9 years of my work in front of 28 people in a room running on systems I had built from scratch. My name is Elliot Harding. I'm 54. I'd been at Corebridge Technologies since the beginning, employee number 8, back when Owen Garfield ran the whole operation out of a rented office with bad Wi-Fi and a whiteboard covered in ideas that hadn't been tested yet. I believed in what we were building. I showed up every day and did the work nobody else knew how to do, and I kept showing up long after most people would have stopped. 10-3 projects, not tasks, not tickets, projects. The kind that took months, kept me at my desk past midnight, and quietly became the foundation of everything Corebridge touched. Middleware that connected legacy systems to our platform, scaling infrastructure that kept us online when traffic tripled overnight, international frameworks that let us operate across 6 countries without a single compliance issue. None of that was on a slide deck with my name on it. None of it got announced in an all-hands meeting. It just worked. Quietly, reliably, invisibly. That was the job, and I was fine with that, until Nolan Briggs arrived. He came in with a new title, VP of Operations, a sharp suit, and the kind of confidence that belongs to people who have never had to fix anything they broke. The board brought him in from a competitor. Owen introduced him at a company meeting and said he was going to help Corebridge operate at the next level. Everyone applauded. I noticed he didn't shake hands with the engineers. He'd been in the building 31 days when he sent out a calendar invite that said team alignment, no agenda. No context, just a time in a conference room. I'd been around long enough to know that kind of meeting only goes one direction. I walked in and found 28 people already seated. Sawyer from engineering was near the window, arms crossed. Ride, a junior dev I'd spent 4 months mentoring, was at the far end of the table looking at his phone. Brooke from accounting sat near the door, and Donna from HR was positioned near the back wall, not making eye contact with me when I walked in. That told me everything before Nolan said a single word. He had a slide deck loaded. My name was on the screen, my performance metrics, a red downward arrow under a 9-year tenure summary. Your work here has been mediocre at best, he said, and he didn't lower his voice. Despite 9 years with this company, I don't see evidence of meaningful contribution. Output lags behind newer team members. No innovation, uninspired technical choices across the board. Someone shifted in their chair, nobody looked at me. I glanced at Owen, who was sitting at the corner of the table. He was looking at his phone, perhaps. Nolan said, checking his watch like he had somewhere better to be, "It's time you moved on." The room went completely still. I sat there for a moment, just breathing. I looked at 28 people I had bled for, people I had answered calls from at midnight, when systems went down. People whose projects I had saved without ever asking for credit. I looked at Owen one more time. He still hadn't looked up. Then I stood slowly, picked up my coffee, and looked directly at Nolan. I said 5 words, "You'll feel this soon enough." Then I walked out. The drive home was quiet. I didn't know what to feel, so I didn't try. I just drove. When I got home, I looked around the house. The back porch I'd been meaning to repair since 2019. A shelf in the garage still half assembled. 9 years of weekends I never had staring back at me from every corner. I changed out of my work clothes and started on the porch. Here's the thing about the offer I had turned down 3 years earlier. Apex Systems had come to me directly. Director of Engineering, 40% more salary, better title, shorter commute. A clean opportunity with a company that had been trying to close the gap with Corebridge for years. I had the offer letter on my desk for 48 hours before I made the call. Owen called me the night before the deadline. Not a text, a phone call. "Elliot, I need you here," he said. "You're the only one who actually understands what we're building. I know I don't say it enough, but this company doesn't work without you." I turned Apex down the next morning. I thought about that call a lot during those first few days at home. Not with anger, just with the specific kind of clarity that comes when something you ignored for a long time finally sits down next to you and refuses to move. The first call came on day 4. It was Sawyer. He sounded like he hadn't slept. "Elliot." Long pause. The billing system just miscalculated charges for 340 customers. "We've been at it for 2 days. Nobody can figure out where it's breaking. Nobody knows that code base the way you do." I told him I was sorry to hear that. I told him to escalate it to leadership. Then I said goodbye and went back to the porch. That wasn't cold. That was just honest. The problem wasn't mine to fix anymore. Nolan had made that clear in front of 28 people, and Owen had watched it happen without saying a word. Over the next 2 weeks, the calls and messages kept coming. Ride texted asking about a configuration in the international portal that kept dropping connections every 6 hours. A project manager I barely knew sent an email asking if I had documentation for the Aurora client implementation. Brooke forwarded me a thread where 2 senior developers were arguing about how a legacy integration worked. neither of them with the right answer. I read every message. I didn't respond to any of them. Then the news started. Corebridge missed quarterly targets by a margin that got noticed. A major client posted publicly about system failures affecting their operations. The stock dropped 22% in a single trading day. Financial reporters called it unforeseen technical challenges stemming from recent organizational changes. That was a careful way of saying the wheels had come off. Around that same time, I got an email from Apex Systems. They were looking for a director of engineering. The compensation package was described as significantly above market rate. They asked if I was available for an interview that Friday. I replied that Friday worked. Owen called on a Sunday evening. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message that was short and careful, said he wanted to talk, said things had gotten complicated, said he hoped I was doing well. I listened to it once and set the phone down. He called again Tuesday morning. I picked up. He didn't waste time. "We need you back, Elliot. I won't pretend otherwise." "I heard things have been difficult." I said, "That's one way to put it." He paused. "I want to make this right. I want to make you an offer. I'm listening." He named a number. It was 25% above my previous salary, a modest title change, potential equity review after a year. I said, "That's not going to work for me, Owen." He asked what would. "I'll think about it and call you back." I didn't call that day. I didn't call the next day either. Those 48 hours weren't a tactic. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't sitting there running a negotiation playbook. I was genuinely thinking it through. I had an Apex interview on Friday that had gone extremely well. Their technical director understood exactly what I had built at Corebridge and told me directly he had been trying to replicate parts of it for 2 years. They made a verbal offer before I left the building. It was strong, it was real, and it came from people who had done their homework on my work before I walked in the door. So the question wasn't how to squeeze more out of Owen. The question was whether going back to Corebridge made any sense at all, at any price. What I kept coming back to was the work itself. Not loyalty to Owen, not sentiment about being employee number 8, the work. There were systems at Corebridge I had built over 9 years that were now degrading because nobody else fully understood how they connected. That bothered me in a specific way that was hard to explain to someone who had never built something at that scale. It wasn't pride. It was closer to watching a structure you designed start to crack because the people maintaining it don't know where the load-bearing walls are. Thursday afternoon, I called Owen back. I laid out my terms clearly and without a long preamble, 215 times my previous salary. VP of Engineering with full technical autonomy, meaning no committee approval for architectural decisions. Written acknowledgement of my historical contributions to Corebridge infrastructure, distributed company-wide. And a hybrid schedule going forward. 3 days in office, 2 remote. That last one mattered more than people might expect. In 9 years, I had never once worked from home. Not a single day. Owen went quiet for a moment. I said, "I have an offer from Apex that I need to respond to by Friday." He said, "Give me a few hours." The signed contract came through at 90:47 that night. Every term, no modifications. I read it twice, made sure the language on the public acknowledgement was specific enough to mean something, then signed and sent it back. I poured myself a drink, not to celebrate exactly, just to mark the moment for what it was. The next morning, I sent Apex a short and professional email thanking them for their time and letting them know I would not be moving forward. It was the second time in my career I had turned them down. I hoped it would be the last time I had to make that kind of choice based on someone else's failure to recognize what they already had. Walking back into Corebridge felt strange in a way I hadn't anticipated. Same building, same security guard at the front desk who nodded at me like I'd never left. But this time, the badge he handed me was a different color, and I took a different elevator to a floor I had never worked on before. The company-wide announcement had gone out that morning. It didn't just say I was returning, it listed by name the core infrastructure systems I had designed, the middleware architecture that processed 4 million transactions a month, the international compliance framework that had allowed us to expand into 6 markets without a single regulatory issue, the scaling solution built during our growth period that had kept us online when 3 competitors went dark under similar traffic loads. Every person who had been in that conference room 3 weeks earlier received that email before 9 a.m. I didn't ask for it to be dramatic. I just made sure the language in my contract was specific enough that there was no way to water it down. My team was 17 people. A mix of engineers I'd worked with for years and new hires Owen had scrambled to bring in after things fell apart. I didn't give a speech on day 1. I just pulled up the system architecture on the main screen in the dev room and started walking through it with them, hands on the keyboard, showing where things had broken and why. No presentation deck, no buzzwords, just the work. By the end of week 2, we had stabilized the billing system, patched the international portal, and recovered enough of the Aurora client implementation to get that relationship back on track. On Friday night, when the final deployment went through clean, someone in the room started clapping. It spread. We ended up at a bar 2 blocks away and stayed until past midnight. Good night, the kind you don't manufacture. Then, on a Tuesday evening, after most of the team had gone home, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. It said, Nolan wasn't just incompetent, he wasn't working alone. Millbrook Diner, 7 p.m. tonight, come alone. I sat with that for a few minutes. Anonymous messages suggesting conspiracy are usually either nothing or something you can't ignore. The phrasing wasn't working alone was specific enough that I decided to go. The man waiting for me at a corner booth was Neil Tran, 38, IT auditor. I knew his name from internal directories, but we had never worked together directly. He looked like he had been running on coffee and 4 hours of sleep for the better part of a week. He didn't open with small talk. He slid a tablet across the table and let me read. What I was looking at was an email thread between Nolan Briggs and an account registered to an Apex Systems executive. It wasn't vague, it was detailed. Reports on Corebridge's proprietary architecture, section by section, assessments of which systems were most vulnerable to disruption, and a list of personnel flagged for removal. With notes next to each name, my name was at the top of the list. The note next to it said, Priority. Remove before detection possible. I kept reading. I didn't say anything for a while. How did you find this? I asked. Neil explained that it hadn't been intentional. He had been running a routine audit on our backup servers 2 weeks after the major system failures, looking for corrupted recovery files. He found a directory that shouldn't have existed, with access permissions that had been quietly modified 6 weeks before Nolan arrived. When he started pulling the thread, it led him to a cache of communications that Nolan had apparently believed were fully deleted. I didn't know who to bring this to, Neil said. I didn't know how far up it went. I understood that concern immediately, because the next section of documents he showed me pushed the problem well past Nolan. Hal Prescott, chairman of the board. Financial records showing investments in Apex Systems through 2 shell companies registered in Delaware. Calendar entries for private meetings with an Apex executive that took place while Nolan was still being evaluated as a candidate for the VP role. And a strategy memo, not long, maybe half a page, outlining a plan to engineer a controlled decline in Corebridge's market position and technical reputation before Apex moved in with an acquisition offer. The idea wasn't to destroy Corebridge. It was to weaken it enough that the board could justify accepting a below-market buyout. The people who would profit most from that deal were the same people who had voted to bring Nolan in. I handed the tablet back to Neil and looked at the table for a moment. Does Owen know about any of this? I asked. Neil said he wasn't sure. That was the part he couldn't figure out. And that uncertainty was exactly why he hadn't gone to Owen first. I told Neil I needed time to verify what he had shown me independently. I told him not to change anything about his routine, not to discuss this with anyone, and not to reach out to me again through his regular accounts. He agreed. He looked relieved just to have told someone on the drive home. I started going through what I knew. If the documents were real, my dismissal had nothing to do with my performance. It had been a deliberate move to remove the one person at Corebridge most likely to notice what was being done to the company's systems. Everything that followed, the failures, the stock drop, the client complaints, had been the intended result of a plan that started long before Nolan walked in the door. The next morning I came in early before anyone else arrived and started pulling VPN logs. The VPN logs confirmed it. Access patterns during Nolan's 31 days showed repeated off-hours connections to our most sensitive architecture directories, not random browsing. Targeted pulls on specific systems, the same ones Neil's documents had flagged as high-value extraction points. Someone had known exactly where to look before they ever set foot in the building. I spent 3 days cross-referencing timestamps, terminal IDs, and access credentials without telling anyone what I was doing. I ran it against server logs, against badge entry records, against backup snapshots. Every thread I pulled came back to the same place. Nolan had not been operating alone, and the person helping him from the inside had board-level access. On Thursday morning, I went to Owen's office and closed the door behind me. I put the summary on his desk. Not the full document set, just the key findings organized cleanly so there was no room for misunderstanding. I watched him read it. He got about halfway through before he set it down and looked up at me. "There's something I need to tell you." He said what he told me was this. He had started noticing irregularities about 4 months before Nolan arrived. Unusual data access from board-level accounts. agenda items appearing in board meetings that seemed designed to push toward specific vendors and restructuring decisions that didn't make obvious business sense. He had started quietly documenting it. His plan had been to build an airtight case before he moved on anyone. Then the board pushed Nolan through over Owen's objections. Owen had raised concerns internally and been overruled. He told himself he could manage Nolan while continuing to build his case. What he hadn't anticipated was Nolan moving as fast as he did and dismissing me before Owen had a chance to intervene. I sat across from him and let the silence sit for a moment. "You watched it happen," I said. "You were in that room." "I know," he said. He didn't make excuses. I'll give him that. The thing about being told the person you turned down a better job for knew you were being set up and said nothing is that it lands differently than simple betrayal. Simple betrayal is clean. This was more complicated. Owen wasn't the one who had built the trap. He had just failed to pull me out of it in time, and then calculated that my damage was a manageable loss compared to the larger exposure he was trying to protect. I had built 9 years of this company on the belief that he wouldn't make that calculation about me. I looked at him for a long moment, then I said, "Here's where we are. We finish this together, or I take everything I have to the SEC without you. Either way, it gets finished." Owen nodded once. Together, we designed the trap over the following week. I created 3 dummy projects inside our development environment. Each one looked like legitimate proprietary work in progress. Each was seeded with different information and accessible through different credential levels. Project Slate was visible through access pathways that Nolan's old accounts had used, left open as a residual channel. Project Ridge was accessible to the executive team. Project Harbor was restricted to board-level access only. It contained a pricing algorithm that looked on the surface like a genuine breakthrough in contract valuation modeling. It was detailed, it was convincing, and it was wrong in a specific way that would not become obvious until someone tried to use it on a real bid. Under actual contract conditions, it would cause systematic underbidding on large deals, the kind of error that would be embarrassing at best and financially damaging at worst. Then we waited. Hal Prescott accessed Project Harbor at 2 to 41 a.m. on a Tuesday. I had the access log, the terminal ID, and security footage of a dark office with 1 active monitor. I had everything I needed. 3 weeks later, Apex used the Project Harbor algorithm in a pitch for a $3 million contract with a financial services firm. They underbid the actual cost by a margin that the client's own procurement team flagged immediately as a calculation error. Apex lost the deal before the meeting was over. When I got the confirmation on that, I was sitting alone in my office after hours. I read the report twice. Then I leaned back in my chair and looked at the ceiling for a minute. I had not confronted anyone. I had not made threats. I had not gone to the press or staged any kind of public accusation. I had simply built something, made sure the right people knew it existed, and waited for them to reach for it. They had done the rest themselves. That is the thing about people who take what doesn't belong to them. They don't stop to ask why the door was left open. Owen and I met the following morning to go over what we had. The Prescott access log, the Project Harbor data appearing in the Apex pitch deck, the original documents Neil had recovered from the backup server, the financial records connecting Prescott and one other board member to Apex through shell companies. Taken separately, each piece was significant. Together, they were conclusive. Owen contacted legal counsel and federal prosecutors specializing in corporate espionage that afternoon. The board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. We decided to let it proceed normally until the right moment. I spent the weekend at home. I finished the shelf in the garage that had been half assembled for 2 years. It took about 90 minutes once I actually sat down to do it. The quarterly board meeting started at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Standard agenda. Hal Prescott ran the opening with his usual efficiency, moving through financial reports and market updates like a man who had no reason to be concerned about anything. Owen called on me about 40 minutes in for what the agenda listed as a quarterly technical operations update. I connected my laptop to the display system. The first slide was not a chart or a system diagram. It was a single image, security footage. Hal Prescott seated at a Corebridge terminal in an empty office. Timestamp in the corner, 2:41 a.m. The room shifted immediately. A couple of board members leaned forward. Prescott's expression moved through something, not quite surprise, more like a man recalculating his options in real time. I didn't rush it. I had spent 9 years building things that worked precisely because I never skipped steps. This was no different. I walked through the access log from that night. Then the VPN record showing the pattern of off-hours data pulls going back through Nolan's tenure. Then the email chain Neil had recovered from the backup server, the communications between Nolan and the Apex executive account, including the personnel list with my name at the top. Then the financial records connecting Prescott and one other board member to Apex through 2 Delaware shell companies. And finally, a page from the Apex pitch deck for the financial services contract, showing the Project Harbor pricing algorithm they had used verbatim, the one that had caused them to underbid by enough to lose a $3 million deal in the room. I set the final slide up and said, this wasn't disorganized mismanagement. It was a deliberate effort to degrade Corebridge's operational capacity and technical reputation in preparation for a below-market acquisition. It was coordinated from inside this room. Prescott said the meeting was adjourned. His voice was steady, but something behind it wasn't. Owen said, we've already been in contact with legal counsel and federal prosecutors. They're waiting downstairs. 2 investigators and corporate counsel came in through the side door. Prescott and the second board member were asked to accompany them to a conference room on the ground floor. They went. No dramatic confrontation, no raised voices. Just 2 men standing up from a table and walking out of a room, and everyone else sitting in silence watching them go. The remaining board members spent the next hour in a closed session with Owen and outside counsel. I went back to my office and answered emails. That sounds anticlimactic. It wasn't. It was exactly the right amount of climax for what had actually happened. The dramatic version of this story ends with a shouting match and a villain confessing in front of witnesses. The real version ends with paperwork and lawyers and 2 men walking quietly toward consequences they had spent months trying to avoid. Federal charges came down 6 weeks later. Prescott, the second board member, and Nolan, who had already been gone for over a month, all faced counts of corporate espionage and securities fraud. The legal process moved at its own pace after that, the way it does. Corebridge spent the following months rebuilding, not just the technical systems, which my team had largely stabilized by that point, but the governance structure. Owen brought me into the design of new transparency protocols and a contribution recognition framework that tied advancement to documented, measurable work rather than visibility and politics. It wasn't a perfect fix. No single policy change makes a company immune to the kind of rot that had set in, but it was a real start and I made sure the teeth were in the right places. 4 months after the board meeting, Corebridge's stock had recovered to within 8% of its pre-crisis level. The Aurora client renewed their contract at a higher tier. 2 new enterprise clients signed on in the same quarter. I still come in 3 days a week. The other 2 I work from home. The back porch is fully repaired. The garage shelf has been holding weight for months without any issue. Small things, but they mean something when you spent 9 years not having time for them. I didn't rebuild Corebridge for revenge. I rebuilt it because broken systems bother me. That has always been true, and it will probably always be true. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good to be the one holding the wrench. If any part of the story felt familiar, if you've spent years doing work that held everything together while someone else got the credit, or if you've ever watched a room full of people look away when you needed one of them to speak up, then you already know what I know. The work doesn't lie, systems don't forget who built them, and the people who try to erase what you built will eventually have to live inside the consequences of that decision. You don't have to chase that moment. Just stay sharp, document everything, and know what you're worth before someone else tries to tell you. Drop a comment below if this hit close to home, and if you've ever been the person in that room who kept the lights on while nobody noticed, this one was for you.